The cold metal chamber began to warm as ancient systems came back to life after 500,000 years of silence. Admiral Hyunwoo Park felt the strange tingling sensation as his body slowly awakened from the deepest sleep known to mankind. His eyes opened to see the familiar blue glow of the hibernation bay aboard the Eternal Dawn, humanity's last hope drifting in the darkness between stars. The ship's artificial intelligence spoke in a voice that had been waiting patiently for this moment since before Earth fell. Admiral Park, the awakening sequence is complete. Commander Gina Kim is also being revived in Bay 7. All systems are functioning within normal parameters. Hyunwoo sat up slowly, his muscles weak from the long sleep, but his mind sharp with purpose. He had been 28 years old when he entered the hibernation chamber. Now, technically, he was still 28, but 500,000 years had passed since he last drew breath. The thought made his head spin with the impossible weight of time. "Status report," he said, his voice rough from disuse. The hibernation chamber hissed as it opened fully, and he stepped onto the cold deck plates of the ship that had been his home and tomb for longer than human civilization had existed on Earth. "We have reached the Proxima Centauri system as planned," the AI responded. "However, long-range sensors have detected energy signatures consistent with the alien coalition forces. The Velkari Federation, Thaxon Empire, and Morvek Collective are all present in this sector of space." The names hit Hyunwoo like physical blows. These were the species that had come to Earth's solar system 500,000 years ago, with their massive fleets and their demand for humanity's surrender. When Earth's governments had refused to bow down and become slaves, the aliens had unleashed weapons that turned entire continents into glass. Billions had died in the first day alone. Gina Kim appeared at the doorway to the hibernation bay, moving with the same careful steps as someone learning to walk again. She had been Earth's youngest fleet commander at 26 when the evacuation began, brilliant and fierce in battle against impossible odds. Her dark hair was the same length it had been when she entered sleep, but her eyes carried the weight of memories from humanity's darkest hour. "They're still out there," she said, not bothering with greetings. Both of them knew what the other had dreamed about during the long sleep. Every human aboard the Eternal Dawn had shared the same nightmares of earth burning, of children crying, for parents who would never answer, of cities that had stood for thousands of years reduced to radioactive rubble in minutes. "Yes, but we are not the same species that fled Earth," Hyunwoo replied, walking toward the observation deck. Through the massive viewport, the red glow of Proxima Centauri filled the darkness. Somewhere in this system, they would make their new home and begin the work they had come here to do. The ship's corridors were quiet but not empty. As they walked, they passed other humans who were already awake and working. These were not the refugees who had fled Earth in panic and desperation. During the long journey, the AI had awakened small groups of people in rotating cycles, each serving for decades before returning to hibernation. Engineers had improved the ship's systems and weapons. Scientists had studied the alien technology they had managed to capture during Earth's final battle. Soldiers had trained in combat techniques designed specifically to fight the three species that had destroyed their world. "How many are awake now?" Gina asked as they entered the command center. "Approximately 5,000, the AI answered. "All critical positions are staffed and we have full operational capability. The remaining 45,000 colonists can be awakened within 72 hours if needed." But these were not just colonists anymore, Hyunwoo realized as he looked at the tactical displays showing the ship's current capabilities. The Eternal Dawn had been humanity's largest colony vessel when it fled Earth, designed to carry 50,000 people to a new world where they could rebuild civilization. Now it was something else entirely. The ship's hull had been reinforced with materials that hadn't existed when they left Earth. Its weapon systems used principles of physics that humanity had learned from studying captured alien technology for thousands of years. Its crew were the descendants of Earth survivors, trained from birth for one single purpose. Lieutenant Dong-Hyun Lee approached the command station and saluted. He looked young, perhaps 25, but Hyunwoo knew that this man had spent 50 years awake during the journey. learning every detail of alien culture, technology, and military tactics before returning to hibernation. In a very real sense, Dong-hyun was older and more experienced than the admiral himself. "Sir, we have completed our survey of the local region," Dong-hyun reported. "The aliens have established a significant presence here, but they are not expecting any threat. Their patrols are routine, their security measures are basic, and their communications are unencrypted. They have grown comfortable in their dominance." Engineer So Young Choi joined them at the tactical display, her fingers dancing over controls that would have been incomprehensible to the humans who first fled Earth. "Their technology has advanced very little since we left," she said with satisfaction. "While we have been innovating out of necessity, they have been stagnating out of comfort. Our weapons are now superior to theirs. Our ships are faster and our defenses are stronger." Captain Min Ho Sung stepped forward with a datapad containing intelligence reports. "We have identified their major installations in this system: 3 mining stations, 1 military outpost, and a communications relay that connects to the broader galactic network. If we strike carefully, we can begin gathering information about their current political structure and military capabilities without alerting them to our presence." Hyunwoo studied the data, but his mind was elsewhere. For 500,000 years, the children of Earth had dreamed of this moment. Not the moment of finding a new home, but the moment when they could begin to balance the scales of justice. The aliens had assumed that destroying humanity's homeworld would end the threat they represented. They had been wrong. "They think we are extinct," Gina said, reading his thoughts. "To them, humanity is ancient history, a footnote in their imperial records. They have forgotten that they created an enemy, not eliminated one." "Then we will remind them," Hyunwoo replied, his voice carrying the authority of command and the cold promise of vengeance. "Begin Phase 1 operations. I want detailed intelligence on every alien installation within 50 light-years. I want to know their strengths, their weaknesses, their fears, and their blind spots. Most importantly, I want to know the current location and status of Earth." The command crew began their work with the efficiency of people who had been preparing for this moment across geological timespans. The eternal dawn sensors reached out into the darkness, gathering information about the galaxy that humanity had been forced to flee. Advanced probe ships, no larger than fighters but carrying technology beyond the aliens' ability to detect, launched toward distant star systems. As the operation began, Hyunwoo allowed himself one moment of personal reflection. Somewhere in the galaxy, the planet Earth still existed. The aliens had not destroyed it completely, but had instead turned it into a monument to their victory. For 500,000 years, the 3 species had celebrated their triumph over humanity on the anniversary of Earth's fall. They held ceremonies on the ruins of human cities, built monuments to their own greatness where human children had once played. But now the children of Earth had returned, and they had learned patience from their long exile. They had learned cunning from their desperate fight for survival. Most importantly, they had learned that some things were worth waiting 500,000 years to set right. The stars around Proxima Centauri held no warmth for humanity, but they would serve as the launching point for something that had been building in the darkness for longer than most species had existed. Earth's children had come home, not to the world of their birth, but to the galaxy that had tried to erase them from existence. Soon, the aliens would learn what it meant to make enemies of a species capable of holding grudges across such vast spans of time. 6 months had passed since the awakening, and the galaxy was beginning to experience strange problems that no one could explain. On the mining world of SciFiPrime, 3 massive extraction facilities had suffered complete system failures in the same week, shutting down operations that had run smoothly for 10,000 years. The local administrators blamed equipment age and ordered replacements, never suspecting that invisible human infiltrators had introduced viruses into their computer networks. Lieutenant Dong-hyun Lee stood in the shadows of a Thaxon military base, his body surgically altered to resemble one of the reptilian aliens. The transformation had taken months and caused incredible pain, but it allowed him to walk among Earth's enemies without detection. His mission was simple: gather intelligence and plant seeds of chaos that would grow slowly over time. The Thaxon, Base was exactly what human analysts had predicted after studying alien psychology for centuries. The security was designed to keep enemies out, but it assumed that all enemies would come from outside. The idea that someone might already be inside, disguised as one of their own, was so foreign to their thinking that they had no defenses against it. Dong-hyun accessed a computer terminal and began copying military databases while inserting carefully designed corruptions into their backup systems. The corruptions would not activate immediately, but would slowly spread through their network over months, causing weapons to malfunction at critical moments and communications to fail during important battles. Meanwhile, on a Morvek trade station, 3 systems away, engineer So Young Choi was conducting her own operation. The insectoid Morvek were easier to impersonate because their society relied heavily on pheromone communication, and human technology had learned to replicate these chemical signals perfectly. She moved through the station's maintenance areas, installing devices no larger than coins that would monitor all traffic passing through this critical trade hub. The devices were marvels of human engineering, built with techniques learned during the long exile when every scrap of resources had to be used with perfect efficiency. They were invisible to alien scanners, powered by ambient energy, and capable of transmitting their data across interstellar distances without being detected. Through them, humanity would learn the locations of every major alien installation in the galaxy. Back aboard the Eternal Dawn, Admiral Hyun-woo studied the intelligence reports flowing in from dozens of human operatives scattered across alien space. The picture they painted was both encouraging and infuriating. The 3 species that had destroyed Earth had indeed grown complacent in their dominance, but they had also grown more cruel and wasteful than ever before. "They keep human slaves," Commander Gina Kim reported, her voice tight with controlled anger. "Millions of them, scattered across hundreds of worlds, the descendants of the few thousand humans they captured during Earth's evacuation, bred and raised as property for 500,000 years." The revelation hit the command center like a physical blow. Everyone had assumed that the small number of humans captured during the evacuation had been executed quickly. The idea that their descendants had been suffering as slaves for geological ages was almost too horrible to process. "How many?" Hyun-woo asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know the answer. "Current estimates suggest approximately 50 million humans in various forms of bondage," Captain Min Ho-sung replied from his intelligence station. "They are used primarily as manual laborers and servants, though some are kept as curiosities in private collections. The aliens view them as proof of their victory over a dangerous species." Dr. Tae-ho Lim, the ship's chief scientist, pulled up genetic analysis data on the main screen. "The good news is that they remain genetically human, despite the time that has passed. The aliens have prevented them from advancing technologically, but they have not altered their basic nature. If we can free them, they can be integrated into our forces." "When we free them," Gina corrected firmly, "this changes our mission parameters. We are not just here to balance the scales of justice for Earth's destruction. We are here to liberate our people who have been suffering in chains while we slept." The intelligence reports continued to flow in, painting a picture of a galaxy where the 3 alien powers had divided up space among themselves and ruled with casual cruelty. Entire species had been enslaved or exterminated for the crime of resisting their expansion. Worlds that had once harbored unique cultures and civilizations had been strip-mined and abandoned when their resources were exhausted. Lieutenant Woo Jin-yoon entered the command center with the most disturbing report. Yet, he had spent 2 months infiltrating a Velkari research facility where they studied primitive species and their quaint attempts at resistance. The facility contained detailed records of Earth's final battle, including video recordings of Mako, human cities burning and children fleeing from alien weapons. "They keep these records not for historical purposes but for entertainment," Woo Jin reported. "The destruction of Earth is considered one of their greatest comedic achievements. They hold viewing parties on the anniversary, laughing at the pathetic mammals who thought they could resist superior beings." The silence in the command center was broken only by the quiet hum of the ship's systems. Every human present had lost family and friends during Earth's fall, but knowing that their deaths had become entertainment for their killers added a new dimension to their grief and rage. Admiral Hyunwoo stood and walked to the main display, which showed the current positions of alien fleets throughout the galaxy. Red dots marked Thaxan military bases, blue showed Velkari industrial facilities, and green indicated Morvek trade routes. The display looked like a three-dimensional map of an empire built on the bones of countless civilizations. "They have forgotten the most important rule of warfare," he said quietly. "Never leave enemies alive unless you are absolutely certain they cannot return to haunt you." Captain Minho approached with new intelligence from the deepest levels of alien computer networks. His infiltration programs had finally reached the most classified databases, and what they found there would change everything. "Sir, we have located Earth," he announced. "The planet still exists and is largely intact. The aliens did not destroy it completely because they wanted to preserve it as a monument to their victory. They have built structures on every continent, celebrating the defeat of humanity, and they hold annual ceremonies there to commemorate their triumph." The main display shifted to show images of Earth as it existed now. The blue marble that had given birth to humanity was scarred, but recognizable. Massive alien structures dominated the landscape where human cities had once stood, but the continents remained in their familiar shapes, and the oceans still reflected the light of the sun that had warmed humanity's ancestors for millions of years. "There are approximately 10 million aliens stationed on Earth at any given time," Minho continued. "They rotate in and out on pilgrimage tours, visiting the sites where humanity made its last stand. The entire planet has been turned into a theme park celebrating our extinction." Engineer So Young pulled up detailed scans of Earth's current defenses. "The orbital installations are extensive but outdated. They are designed to prevent anyone from landing on the planet without permission, not to repel a serious military attack. The aliens never considered that someone might try to take Earth back because they believe all humans are dead. They also never imagined that we might return with superior technology," Dr. Tejo added. "Our weapons and ships are now generations ahead of theirs. What they consider impregnable defenses would be target practice for our current capabilities." But Hyunwoo was thinking beyond simple military conquest. The aliens had spent 500,000 years building their civilization on the assumption that humanity was extinct. Their entire political structure, their cultural identity, and their sense of security was based on the belief that they had permanently eliminated the one species that had ever posed a real threat to their dominance. "We will not simply take Earth back," he announced. "We will use Earth as the final stage of a campaign that will shake their entire civilization to its foundations. But first, we must prepare the battlefield." Lieutenant Dong Hyun stepped forward with the tactical assessment his team had been preparing. "We have identified 17 key targets across the three alien empires. These are not military installations but psychological targets, ancient monuments, cultural centers, and symbolic locations that represent their sense of invincibility. We will strike them simultaneously," Gina added, understanding the strategy immediately. "Not to cause maximum damage, but to cause maximum shock. We want them to know that humanity has returned, but we want them to spend time trying to figure out how that is possible and what we plan to do next." The plan was elegant in its simplicity. For 6 months, humans had moved through alien space like ghosts, gathering intelligence and positioning assets. Now they would reveal themselves, but only partially. They would demonstrate that humanity had not only survived, but had grown stronger during their exile. The psychological impact would be devastating to species that had built their entire identity around being humanity's superiors. As the command crew began preparations for the first major operation since Earth's fall, Hyunwoo allowed. The first strike came during the Morvek's most sacred ceremony, the day of mammalian extinction, when their greatest fleet gathered in the Kepler system to celebrate humanity's destruction 500,000 years ago. Admiral Hyunwoo had chosen this moment carefully, knowing that the psychological impact would be far greater than any military victory. Colonel Jae-min-oh commanded the attack squadron, 12 human ships that had been invisible to alien sensors until the moment they opened fire. The human vessels appeared from nowhere, their hulls painted with the ancient blue flag of Earth, and began systematically destroying the Morvek ceremonial fleet with weapons that seemed to bend space itself. The alien ships tried to fight back, but their weapons could not penetrate the human shields, and their targeting systems could not lock onto the rapidly moving human fighters. In less than an hour, 50 of the Morvek's most prestigious vessels had been reduced to burning debris, while the human fleet suffered no casualties at all. But the most devastating part of the attack was not the destruction, but the message that Colonel Jamin broadcast on all frequencies as the battle raged. His voice, speaking perfect Morvek, carried words that would echo across the galaxy. "You celebrated too early," he said calmly, as another alien ship exploded behind him. "Earth's children remember everything, and we have returned to collect what you owe us. This is only the beginning." The broadcast was picked up by news networks across the galaxy, and within hours, every major population center in the three alien empires knew that humanity had not only survived, but had grown strong enough to challenge their most powerful fleets. The reaction was immediate and exactly what human strategists had predicted: panic, confusion, and desperate attempts to understand how a dead species had returned to life. On the bridge of the Eternal Dawn, Commander Gina Kim coordinated 17 simultaneous attacks across alien space. Each strike was precisely calculated to maximize shock while minimizing actual strategic damage. The humans wanted to announce their presence, not start a full-scale war, until they were ready for the final phase of their plan. At the Velkari Cultural Center on Regulus IV, Lieutenant Wu Jin led a team of human commandos in a raid that lasted exactly 17 minutes. They destroyed the museum wing dedicated to humanity's defeat, freeing dozens of human artifacts that had been displayed as trophies of conquest. But more importantly, they left behind a message carved into the wall in perfect Velkari script. "Every human child you murdered will be avenged. Every human city you burned will be rebuilt. Every year you celebrated our death, we were preparing for your judgment." The Thaxon military responded to the attacks by mobilizing their fleets and declaring a state of emergency across their empire. But they had no targets to strike. The human ships appeared, delivered their message of destruction, and vanished into space as if they had never existed. Thaxon admirals who had never lost a battle in their entire careers found themselves helpless against an enemy that refused to fight according to the established rules of warfare. Dr. Yunji Nam, working from her laboratory aboard the Eternal Dawn, had spent decades perfecting the technologies that made these tactics possible. Human ships could now bend light around their hulls, making them completely invisible to alien sensors. Their quantum drives allowed them to appear anywhere in a star system within minutes, making conventional defense strategies useless. "The aliens built their military doctrine around fighting enemies like themselves," she explained to Admiral Hyunwoo as they reviewed footage of the attacks. "They assume that all spacefaring species will develop similar technologies and fight similar battles. They never prepared for an enemy that had been forced to innovate under the pressure of extinction." The psychological warfare campaign was working exactly as planned. Alien communication networks buzzed with fearful speculation about humanity's return. Some theorists claimed that the attacks were being carried out by a previously unknown species, using human symbols to cause confusion. Others argued that a small group of humans must have survived in hiding and developed new weapons through cooperation with other species. But the alien leadership knew the truth, even if they were reluctant to admit it publicly. In secret meetings held in the most secure facilities across the galaxy, the three species acknowledged that humanity had not only survived their genocide attempt, but had grown stronger during their exile. The question now was what to do about it. Admiral Seokjin Kang had anticipated this reaction and prepared the next phase of operations accordingly. If the aliens wanted to understand the scope of the threat they faced, humanity would show them exactly what 500,000 years of patient preparation could accomplish. The second wave of attacks came 2 weeks later, and this time, they were not symbolic strikes against cultural targets. 51 star systems across the galaxy experienced simultaneous military operations as human forces emerged from hiding and began liberating the worlds where their enslaved kinsmen had suffered for countless generations. The liberation of Tau, Ceti 7, was broadcast live across the galaxy, as Captain Minho led a regiment of human soldiers in an assault on the slave compounds where 10,000 human descendants had been kept in chains. The alien guards, equipped with weapons that had not been updated in centuries, were no match for human forces using technology that seemed like magic. The freed humans were initially terrified, having been taught from birth that they were the last remnants of a weak and defeated species. But when they saw their rescuers, saw the advanced ships and weapons, and heard the story of humanity's long exile and preparation, their fear transformed into something far more dangerous to the alien empires: hope. Engineers So Young coordinated the technical aspects of the liberation operations, using captured alien infrastructure to establish secure communication networks between the freed human populations. Within days, the descendants of Earth survivors were sharing information about other slave communities, hidden caches of human artifacts, and weak points in alien defenses that only someone living inside the system could know. The alien response was swift and brutal. Unable to locate and destroy the main human forces, they began executing human slaves en masse, hoping to deprive the returning Earth forces of their kinsmen and discourage further rescue attempts. But this strategy backfired spectacularly, as images of the execution spread throughout the galaxy and turned public opinion against the three empires. Lieutenant Hyen Park had been working for months to establish contact with the dozens of other species that lived under alien rule, many of whom had been conquered and enslaved just as humanity had been. The sight of humans not only surviving genocide but returning to free their people inspired these oppressed populations to begin their own resistance movements. The formation of the Liberation Alliance happened almost by accident, as species after species declared their support for humanity's cause and offered to join the fight against the three empires. The Centauri, who had been enslaved for 300,000 years, provided detailed intelligence about Thaxan military installations. The Kepler Collective, reduced to indentured servants in their own star system, offered their expertise in engineering and manufacturing. Within a month of the first attack, humanity found itself at the center of the largest rebellion in galactic history. Admiral Hyunwoo, who had begun this campaign with 50,000 humans aboard a single ship, now commanded an alliance of over 200 species united by their shared experience of alien oppression and their hope for freedom. The alien empires, faced with rebellions on hundreds of worlds and an enemy they could not locate or predict, made the decision that human strategists had been counting on. They began to withdraw their forces from the outer regions of their empires and consolidate around their most important worlds, including the ultimate prize, Earth itself. But the consolidation played directly into human hands, because it meant that the aliens were abandoning the very territories that the Liberation Alliance needed to establish secure bases and supply lines. As alien forces pulled back, human engineers and their new allies began building the infrastructure necessary for the final phase of the war. Captain Youngsu Bayek established the first major Liberation Alliance base in the Wolf 359 system, only 8 light-years from Earth. From there, human reconnaissance ships began conducting detailed surveillance of humanity's birth world, mapping every defense installation and identifying the best approach routes for the final assault. The intelligence they gathered confirmed what human planners had hoped. Earth's defenses were impressive in raw numbers, but they were designed to prevent escapes and discourage casual visitors, not to repel a determined military attack by forces using advanced technology. The aliens had been so confident in their victory that they had never seriously considered the possibility that someone might try to take Earth back. As reports flowed in from across the galaxy, Admiral Hyunwoo began to see the shape of the final campaign. The alien empires were crumbling from within as oppressed species rose up in rebellion, but they still controlled the most heavily fortified worlds, including Earth. The Liberation Alliance had the advantage. The alien coalition's response to the growing rebellion was swift and merciless, in a way that revealed their true nature to the entire galaxy. When peaceful protests broke out on Vegan Prime demanding the release of human slaves, Velkari forces responded by executing every human in the system and broadcasting the killings as a warning to other worlds. When the Centauri Collective declared their support for the Liberation Alliance, Thaxan warships glassed 3 of their agricultural worlds, leaving billions dead. Commander Wu Jin-yoon watched the intelligence reports flowing in from across the galaxy and felt a cold satisfaction settling in his chest. The aliens were making exactly the mistakes that human strategists had predicted they would make when their comfortable dominance was threatened. Their brutal overreactions were turning neutral species into active enemies and confirming what oppressed populations had always suspected. Their rulers were monsters who maintained power through fear alone. "They're making martyrs faster than we could ever hope to," he reported to Admiral Hyunwoo during the daily briefing aboard the Eternal Dawn. "Every atrocity they commit drives more species into our alliance. Their own cruelty is becoming our best recruitment tool, but the cost of that recruitment was measured in billions of lives, and every human leader felt the weight of responsibility for the suffering they had unleashed by returning to the galaxy." Admiral Seok Jin Kang had argued for launching the final assault on Earth immediately, before the aliens could kill more innocents, but Hyunwoo knew that premature action would only lead to greater disasters. "We bear responsibility for every death," he told his command staff during their emergency meeting. "But we also bear responsibility for the deaths that will continue forever if we fail to see this through to the end. The aliens have shown their true face to the galaxy now. If we defeat them, these will be the last atrocities they ever commit." The rescue operations became more desperate and dangerous as alien forces began targeting civilian populations in their attempts to deny the Liberation Alliance any victories. Lieutenant Dong-hyun Lee led a particularly harrowing mission to extract human slaves from the Rigel system, where Morvek administrators had announced their intention to execute 1,000 humans per day until the rebellion ended. The extraction required perfect coordination between human stealth ships and local resistance fighters who had been inspired by humanity's return. Dong-hyun's team managed to evacuate 47,000 humans in a single night, but not before witnessing the execution of 3,000 more who could not be reached in time. "They're not just killing our people," Dong-hyun reported when he returned to base. "They're torturing them first, making sure the death are as painful and humiliating as possible. They want us to know that every human we fail to save will suffer because of our actions." The psychological pressure was exactly what the aliens intended, but it had an effect they had not anticipated. Rather than discouraging human forces, the atrocities strengthened their resolve and eliminated any lingering doubts about the justice of their cause. These were not honorable enemies who could be negotiated with or shown mercy. They were genocidal monsters who would continue killing until they were stopped permanently. Dr. Yoon-ji Nam made a breakthrough in her analysis of captured alien technology. That changed the strategic picture completely. While examining the computer systems from a destroyed Velkari command ship, she discovered something that human intelligence had missed during all their careful surveillance. The aliens had never developed artificial intelligence comparable to humanity's level. Their computer systems are sophisticated, but they're still following pre-programmed instructions, she explained to the assembled command staff. They never made the breakthrough to true machine consciousness that we achieved during our exile. This gives us a massive advantage in electronic warfare that we haven't been exploiting. Engineer So Young immediately began developing new cyber warfare tools based on this discovery. Within weeks, human hackers were penetrating alien networks at will, stealing critical intelligence and planting viruses that would activate during the final assault. The aliens' own communication systems became weapons that could be turned against them at the moment of humanity's choosing. Captain Minho received perhaps the most important intelligence breakthrough when his deep cover agents finally penetrated the aliens' most classified archives. Hidden in databases that required the highest security clearance to access, they found the real reason why the three species had united to destroy humanity 500,000 years ago. "It wasn't just fear of our military potential," he reported, during a secure briefing with only the senior command staff present. "They had been monitoring Earth for over 1,000,000 years, watching our development and running projections of our future capabilities. Their computer models showed that if humanity was allowed to develop for another 1,000 years, we would surpass all three of their civilizations combined." The revelation recontextualized everything about humanity's exile and return. The attack on Earth had not been a response to human aggression or expansion, but a preemptive genocide designed to eliminate a species that the aliens' own analysis showed would eventually become their superiors. Humanity had been condemned to extinction, not for what they had done, but for what they might become. They were right to fear us, Commander Gina Kim said quietly. Look what we accomplished in 500,000 years of exile, driven by nothing but the need to survive and return. Imagine what we would have achieved in that time if we had remained on Earth with all our resources and infrastructure intact. Admiral Hyunwoo studied the classified alien documents, reading the clinical assessments of humanity's dangerous potential and the unanimous recommendation that the species be eliminated before it could threaten the established galactic order. The aliens had not destroyed Earth in a moment of anger or territorial dispute, but as part of a calculated plan to preserve their own dominance. The discovery transformed the human leadership's understanding of their mission. This was not just about revenge for Earth's destruction or rescue of enslaved humans. This was about preventing the aliens from carrying out similar genocides against other species that showed dangerous potential for growth. The three empires had to be stopped not just for what they had done, but for what they would continue to do if left in power. Lieutenant Hyen Park brought news that the Liberation Alliance had grown beyond anyone's expectations, with over 400 species now actively participating in the rebellion. But she also brought disturbing intelligence about the aliens' final strategy. They're preparing to abandon everything except their core worlds, she reported. Intelligence suggests they plan to retreat to heavily fortified systems and destroy every world they leave behind, rather than allow it to fall into Alliance hands. They would rather rule over ashes than lose control. The scorched earth strategy was exactly what human planners had feared, but it also presented an opportunity. If the aliens were willing to destroy their own territories rather than lose them, it meant they were desperate and making emotional decisions rather than rational ones. Desperate enemies made mistakes, and mistakes could be exploited. Captain Young-Soo Baek had been conducting reconnaissance missions in preparation for the assault on Earth, and his reports painted a picture of a world transformed into the ultimate fortress. The orbital defenses had been reinforced with weapons pulled from across the galaxy, and the surface installations had been expanded to accommodate millions of troops from all three alien species. They're treating Earth as their Alamo, he reported. Every high-ranking leader from all three empires is either already there or heading there now. They intend to make their final stand on the world where they achieved their greatest victory. But Young-Soo had also discovered something that the aliens did not know he had found. A massive network of underground bunkers and tunnels that the original human inhabitants had built during Earth's final siege. The bunkers had been abandoned and forgotten when the surface battle was lost, but they remained intact and could provide secret access points for assault forces. Admiral Seok Jin Kang began developing the operational plan for the final assault, coordinating with alliance leaders from dozens of species to ensure that when the attack came, it would be overwhelming and decisive. The aliens had chosen to concentrate their forces around Earth, which meant that victory there would effectively end their ability to continue the war. Dr. Tae-ho Lim made his own contribution to the final preparations by developing a new class of weapons specifically designed to neutralize the alien coalition's ultimate threat, their willingness to destroy Earth rather than lose it. His quantum containment fields could prevent planetary destruction weapons from functioning, ensuring that humanity's homeworld would survive the final battle, regardless of what desperate measures the aliens might attempt. As the Liberation Alliance, fleets began moving toward the Sol system for the final confrontation, Admiral Hyunwoo took one last walk through the corridors of the Eternal Dawn. The ship that had carried humanity into exile would soon carry them home again, but it would not be returning to the same galaxy it had left. The old order of alien dominance was ending, and what came next would be determined by the actions of the next. The final battle for Earth began not with the thunder of weapons, but with the silence of a galaxy holding its breath. Admiral Hyunwoo stood on the bridge of the Eternal Dawn as it emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system, and for the first time in 500,000 years, human eyes looked upon the star that had given birth to their species. The system was transformed beyond recognition. Where once only 9 planets had orbited the yellow star, now hundreds of artificial structures created a defensive network that stretched from Mercury to beyond Pluto. The alien coalition had spent 5 centuries turning humanity's birthplace into the ultimate fortress, and every approach route bristled with weapons that could destroy entire fleets. "Energy readings are off the scale," reported Engineer So Young from her tactical station. "They've built enough firepower here to sterilize 1,000 worlds. This isn't just a military installation, it's a monument to their power built on the grave of our civilization." But Admiral Seokjin Kang, studying the defensive positions with the eye of someone who had spent centuries preparing for this moment, saw something else entirely. "They've made the classic mistake of generals who have never lost a battle," he so observed. "They've built defenses designed to stop the enemies they remember, not the enemy we've become." The Liberation Alliance fleet that followed the Eternal Dawn out of hyperspace was the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history. Ships from over 400 species filled the space around Sol's outer planets, their crews united by shared suffering under alien rule and shared hope for freedom. At the center of this massive armada, human vessels bearing the blue flag of Earth prepared to reclaim the world that had given them birth. General Young-Soo Baek coordinated the initial assault on Earth's orbital defenses, using tactics that the aliens had never encountered and could not counter. Human ships appeared and disappeared across the battlefield like ghosts, striking critical targets and vanishing before the ponderous alien weapons could respond. The quantum stealth technology that Dr. Yoonji Nam had perfected during the long exile made traditional defensive strategies useless, but the aliens had prepared for this moment too, and they unleashed weapons that had never been used in combat before. Plasma storms swept through space around Earth, making hyperspace jumps impossible and forcing the Liberation Alliance fleet to fight a conventional battle using sublight speeds and traditional weapons. The battle raged for 18 hours across the entire Sol system, with neither side able to gain a decisive advantage. Alliance forces destroyed hundreds of alien defensive platforms, but the aliens had built thousands of them. Human ships proved superior in individual combat, but the aliens had superior numbers and the advantage of prepared positions. Admiral Sun-Mi Lee, commanding the Alliance left flank, discovered the key to victory when her ships penetrated the outer defense ring and reached the asteroid belt. Hidden among the rocks were the remains of humanity's last stand, the debris of Earth's final fleet still drifting in the same orbits where they had died 500,000 years ago. "All ships, this is Admiral Lee," she broadcast on all frequencies. "We're not just fighting to reclaim our homeworld. We're fighting alongside the ghosts of everyone who died defending it. Let them see that their sacrifice was not in vain." The psychological impact of her words rippled through the Liberation Alliance fleet, and suddenly ships that had been fighting defensively began pressing forward with renewed determination. Alliance forces broke through the middle defense ring and began their final approach to Earth itself, where the ultimate confrontation awaited. Commander Wu Jin led the first assault teams to reach Earth's surface, using the ancient tunnel networks that Captain Young-Soo had discovered to bypass the planet's massive surface defenses. His soldiers moved through passages built by human hands 500,000 years ago, past chambers where Earth's last defenders had made their final preparations for battles they could not win. The tunnels emerged in the ruins of what had once been New York City, now the site of the alien coalition's ultimate monument to their victory over humanity. The former United Nations building had been expanded into a massive temple complex where the three species held their most sacred ceremonies, celebrating the extinction of the dangerous mammals who had once threatened their dominance. Admiral Hyunwoo personally led the assault on the temple complex, fighting through corridors decorated with human skulls and artifacts stolen from Earth's museums. Each room was a deliberate insult to humanity's memory, designed to humiliate the dead and glorify their killers. But now the dead were returning through the voices of their children, and the reckoning had finally come. In the temple's heart, they found the alien coalition's supreme leader, an ancient Velkari named Zexthul, who had personally commanded the fleet that destroyed Earth's major cities. He was surrounded by the supreme commanders of all three species, gathered together to activate a doomsday device that would destroy Earth completely, rather than allow it to fall back into human hands. "You should have stayed dead," Zexthul hissed, as human soldiers surrounded him. "Your species was a mistake that the galaxy corrected, and we will not allow you to spread your poison among the stars again." Hyunwoo looked at the creature, that had ordered the deaths of billions of humans and felt no anger, only cold satisfaction. "You were right to fear us," he said quietly. "But you made one critical error. You assumed that destroying our world would destroy our memory. You never imagined that some things are worth waiting 500,000 years to set right." The alien leader activated the doomsday device with his final breath, but the quantum containment fields that Dr. Tae-Ho Lim had prepared absorbed the weapon's energy harmlessly. Instead of destroying Earth, the device's power was redirected into the planet's healing systems, beginning the long process of repairing the ecological damage that 5 centuries of alien occupation had caused. As the news of the Supreme Leader's death spread through the alien fleets, the Coalition's resistance finally broke. Ship after ship surrendered or fled toward the outer rim of the galaxy, abandoning the fortress system they had spent 5 centuries building. The Liberation Alliance found itself in control of not just Earth, but the entire Sol system and all the resources the aliens had assembled there. Captain Minho established the first communication link with the human slaves who had been kept on Earth as living trophies of the Coalition's victory. There were over 1 million of them, descendants of the few thousand humans captured during the original evacuation, and they wept when they saw the blue flags of Earth flying over their former prison. But the victory at Earth was just the beginning of a larger transformation that would reshape the entire galaxy. With the alien coalition defeated, hundreds of species that had lived under oppression for millions of years were suddenly free to reclaim their homeworlds and rebuild their civilizations. Lieutenant Hye-in Park worked with representatives from across the Liberation Alliance to establish the new galactic government, one based on cooperation rather than domination, justice rather than fear. The 3 alien species that had once ruled the galaxy were not exterminated as they had tried to exterminate humanity, but were instead forced to live under the same laws as everyone else. Admiral Gina Kim oversaw the restoration of Earth's cities, using advanced technology to rebuild what had been destroyed while preserving the monuments that the aliens had built as reminders of what happened to species that chose conquest over cooperation. The galaxy would remember the price of tyranny and the patience of justice. As the reconstruction began, Admiral Hyun-woo often walked through the streets of New Seoul, watching human children play in parks where alien monuments to humanity's defeat had once stood. These children had been born during the long exile, but Earth was their birthright reclaimed through the patient determination of their parents and grandparents. His granddaughter, Na Young, now 5 years old, tugged at his uniform as they stood in the memorial garden dedicated to Earth's final defenders. "Grandfather, why did the bad aliens try to hurt our home?" Hyun-woo knelt beside her and pointed to the growing tree they had planted where the alien temple had once stood. "Because they forgot the most important truth in the universe, little. 1. You can destroy someone's home, you can scatter their people, you can even make the galaxy forget they ever existed. But if you leave even one of their children alive and that child remembers who they are and where they came from, then you have not won. You have only made an enemy who will never stop coming for you." He lifted Na-young onto his shoulders and looked up at the blue sky that human children would inherit. Knowing that the long exile was finally over, Earth's children had come home at last, and the galaxy would never be the same. The stars that had once seemed cold and hostile now welcomed the return of a species that had learned the hardest lessons the universe could teach. That some things are worth any sacrifice to preserve, that patience is the greatest weapon of all, and that no matter how long it takes or how far you have to go, there is no force in the universe stronger than the determination to come home. 500,000 years after their exile,